to define it, but if the dead carcass, when the animal is dead, comes in contact with let's say the food, so that would contaminate the food, but only if the food had water or seven liquids that could prepare the food to be able to receive contamination. See, if a person comes in contact with a dead body or a dead carcass, an animal that was not slaughtered, right? Um, that has the ability to contaminate a person. But to contaminate a food, a solid food, there's certain laws. And the Gemara said that we had the story of let's go look back at 11b, right? The Gemara was discussing 11b towards the bottom of the page, well, 3 lines from the bottom. In the Hebrew, in the English, most probably it's 11b, but 11b4. Let's look at the bottom of the page. It's 11b4. The top of the right side. The Gemara said about the Zav, the guy who has a unusual discharge, and he wears a pouch to catch his discharge. And the Gemara says that if he wears it on Shabbat, if he goes out in the street on Shabbat with his pouch, so one writer says that that's called carrying. You're carrying your pouch, even though you tied it to yourself. But the Gemara says, one opinion says that's called carrying and violates the prohibition of carrying on Shabbat. It's not a piece of clothing. It's not the same way if you would tie a key. If I take a key and I tie it, and I go out with my key, that's called carrying the key. The other opinion says, even though you shouldn't do it, but you would not be in violation of the Torah. And the question is, what's the difference? Why the two opinions? What are they arguing about? So the Gemara suggested that it's two different rabbis. One rabbi would say this is called the normal way of going out, and this is called the normal way for this zav to go out. It's called carrying. That's what the guy does. The guy who has a discharge problem and he's afraid that he's going to have an unusual discharge. That's what they do. They put on this pouch. It's a common thing. Therefore, he says he would be in violation, and the other rabbi says that will not be considered a normal carry. So the Gemara want to know why not. The Gemara said if that's a normal thing for a zav, a guy who has this discharge, that's the normal way he carries. That's the normal way he carries a pouch. Some people carry tissues in your pocket. That's normal. For a guy who has a discharge, the normal thing, the way he carries the pouch, doesn't put it in his pocket. He puts it on he ties it to his private area to catch his discharge. That's normal. That's a normal way of carrying. So if it's a normal way of carrying, so why shouldn't he, if he does it unintentionally in Shabbat, why shouldn't there be a biblical violation which would require him to bring a sin offering? The Korban Chatat is a sin offering for violating the Torah unintentionally. Aaron, do I got you up to date? What's going on in the Gemara? David, you got bring you up to date. Adam, if you want to send to the group, Adam, you were here yesterday, Adam, so you were up to date. Review was always very helpful. You know, the Gemara says that if you learn and you don't review, it's like plowing and not harvesting. So it's a point to review. So that's what the Gemara was saying yesterday, and that's what the Gemara was at that point. Why shouldn't the fact that he's wearing, then the Gemara says, if he's wearing the pouch to protect him as protection, that he shouldn't get dirty, that his clothing shouldn't get dirty, not that his body shouldn't get dirty, his clothing shouldn't get dirty, why isn't that considered, why isn't that considered carrying? That was the Gemara's question. So the Gemara says back, meaning to say, if you wear something to protect your body and your body should not get dirty. That's a piece of clothing. That's an article. It's like clothing. You wear clothing to protect your body. But if you're wearing just to protect your clothing, and it's not the normal way of wearing something, it's just the pouch you're putting onto yourself. So therefore, that should be considered carrying. It's like it's not clothing and it's not serving to protect your body. It's only protecting clothing. So that should be considered carrying. Like if on Shabbat, if a guy has a hat and he wants to put a plastic on top of the hat to protect the hat, that's considered like carrying. You know, it's not let's say because the plastic is not really it's not really a garment. It's not worn as a garment. Well, just as a protecting the hat. So the Gemara says. So that's what the Gemara we got up to yesterday. The Gemara says on 11b4. If he needs it not to make his garment dirty, so therefore it should be considered carrying. It's normal. It's a normal way to carry. So Amar Rav Zera, Hay Tanahu Dama. This Tana says, good morning, Asaf, that protecting yourself from not carrying is not considered a significant type of act that we could obligate you for this act they called carrying. Meaning, when you carry something for a purpose, I'm carrying something to go from area number one to area number two. I want this item to go from one place to another place. That the Gemara understands. That's called a significant act of carrying. But just merely to protect. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning. The Gemara at this point is thinking that rabbi who says if he wears it in that fashion, he would be exempt. He's not violating the Torah because he's wearing it just to protect something from getting dirty is not considered a important type of act. And if it's not an important type of act, the Gemara is saying maybe he would not be obligated for carrying on Shabbat. Now let's see where the Gemara wants to compare it to, and the Gemara is going to reject. Okay, the Tnan. We learned in the Mishnah. Hakofa kara ala kotel. If someone goes ahead just to bring Mark up to date and Asaf up to date, the question here in the Gemara is if a person attaches something to himself, he attaches a item to himself for the purpose of, he ties a pouch to the case of the Gemara, to his private area to catch a discharge, that the discharge should not make his clothing dirty, is that type of protecting from getting his clothing dirty, is that called a significant type of act that it's purposeful enough that you should be obligated on Shabbat for that type of carry? And the Gemara was thinking, we have something on record. What do we have on record? We have a Mishnah. Akofa kara ala kotel. If someone turns over a plate, you have a nice plate, David, right? It's a plate that you had morning, Simon. You have a nice plate. You had supper last night, and you take your plate, right? And now you put it on the wall. Now, if you want the rain to clean your plate, you would leave your plate in a certain fashion, on the right side up, whatever you call it, that the water should go into the plate to clean your plate, right? Now, so if you do that, if you put the plate on top of your wall, in order that the rain should clean your plate, that means you want the water to go on the plate. That's why you put the plate that way. If you put the plate upside down, it means you don't want the water to go to clean the plate. So why would you put the plate upside down? Let's say you're not interested in the water going in the plate. You want to protect the wall because the water has been having a negative effect on the wall. Let's say the type of and you see the wall is being affected by the water. So you want to cover the wall. So how do you cover the wall, David? You put the plate to serve as a cover of the wall. But you're not interested in the water, obviously, because if you wanted the water to clean the plate and to serve to cover the wall, to do the wall, protect the wall, you would have put the plate like this and it would have cleaned the plate. Is that correct? So the Gemara says, so as we said before, now we're going to say another point. We said if you have um, food, you have an apple, an orange, it was detached from the ground, detached from the tree. In order for that apple orange to become susceptible to be able to receive contamination, there has to be a liquid, one of 7 liquids, milk, water, two of the 7, will have to be in contact with the food in order to prepare it to become ready to become contaminated. If no water came on subsequent after it was detached from the ground, it will not be able, it's not prepared to receive contamination. Now, if water comes on it and you didn't put the water on it, but in order for the water to actually prepare it, there's another condition. You have to want the water to be there. You have to be happy that the water the water's in contact with the food. And not only have to, and then it goes even further. Even if you don't want the water to be on the food, but if you originally you wanted the water for some other purpose, once you are happy with the water, if subsequently it goes on the food, it's also considered prepares the food for contamination. That's ready to be contaminated if one of those things that have the ability to contaminate will come in contact with the food. So being that said, so here comes the Mishnah. The Mishnah states, if you went ahead and you turned the plate on the wall, and so now why'd you do it? Maybe you turned it upside down. You put it on it, turned it upside down, but you wanted that side should be clean, right? So if you put it, you want the bottom side of the back of the plate to be clean. If you did it, right, David? Right, Simon? You wanted the plate to be cleaned. So that means you're interested in the water. If you're interested in the water, so then then it fills the condition of the Torah that says kiyutan mayim al zera. If water was placed on the food, meaning if you want the water, that's considered you have prepared the food to be able to receive contamination. In bishvil shelo yilka kota. Now we're on Yud Beis Amud Aleph 12a. But if you put the plate on the wall, not because you were interested in the water, you were interested to protect the wall, so that type of act is insignificant. The Gemara says, well, since you're not interested in the water. If you're not interested in the water, so therefore, if the water subsequently falls onto the food, it will not prepare the food for contamination. In order for food to be prepared for contamination, water has to go on it. Either you place the water on it, or even if you don't place the water on it, you have to have been happy to have the water on it. But if you're not interested in the water, because you put the plate on top of the wall. Good morning, Emmanuel. You put the plate on top of the wall just to protect the wall. You're not interested in the water. You have no use for the water. You don't want the water. Therefore, it will not, if that water subsequently, if it goes on your plate that you put on top of the wall to protect the wall, goes on to food, it will not contaminate, will not prepare the food to be able to receive contamination.
What does this have to do with carrying?
Very good. What? Great. So the Gemara was thinking at this point that the same way that the plate on top of the wall, if it's just to protect the wall, the Gemara was thinking it's not considered significant to prepare for that water to prepare the food for contamination because you were not interested in the water. You were just
so too is the patch.
So it's right. You were just interested in protection, you were protecting the wall. So too, the patch, the Gemara said, the patch that the guy is wearing, whereas if he's only wearing it to protect his clothing from getting dirty, that's not considered an important act, and therefore it will not be considered really carrying. And the Gemara rejects it. The Gemara says you can't compare the two. The Gemara says, there by the wall, the Gemara says, I have no interest in the water. And the reason why, in order for food to be considered prepared to receive contamination, you have to have some desire, you have to have interest in the water. I have no interest in the water, it's not going to do the trick. However, when it comes to carrying, I have interest in carrying the pouch. I want the pouch. I am interested in the pouch. Not I. The guy is interested in the pouch in order to protect his clothing. So if he's interested in the pouch to protect his clothing and he wants to carry that pouch, so that should be a significant act that it should be considered carrying. That's what the Gemara shoots back. Midami. How could you compare? How could you compare the two? Hatam over there he didn't want the water at all when he turns the plate upside down and he's interested in just protecting the wall. He has no desire for the water. You have no desire for the water, so therefore that water will not prepare the food for contamination, because the only water that will prepare food contamination when you do not put the water directly on it by yourself is when you are happy that the water is there. If you have no interest in the water, it will not prepare the food. However, Hacha over here by the pouch, Hakabailin high kiss. He wants this pouch, the Kabule Ziva. He wants it to catch the discharge, so therefore his clothing doesn't get dirty. So therefore, it should be considered an act of carrying on Shabbat. So why is there an opinion that says that if this guy, this Zap, who's concerned for discharge, if he attaches his pouch to his body, to his private area in order to protect from discharge going on his clothing, why shouldn't he be chayav? Why shouldn't it be considered an act of carrying on Shabbat? Like we said earlier, if you go ahead and you'll take a string and you put it through the hole of a key and you wrap it around your neck and you walk out with it on Shabbat, a lot of, if it's considered a normal way of carrying a key, that'll be carrying. That'll be carrying. If that's a normal way of carrying a key, maybe perhaps it's not the normal way of carrying a key. Maybe you might not violate the Shabbat, but if you could be a lot of old people. Maybe I wonder, a lot of it's normal for a certain amount of people to carry a key that way, but maybe they're afraid they wear things around their neck because they're afraid they're going to lose things. So they make it, they lose their keys. I presume older people have more of a problem, perhaps. But that's a good question. So the Gemara says, the Gemara says, Haladami el the Sefer. It's only comparable to the Sefer 12a1. What does it say in the Sefer over there? It says, Areva sheyared laf letocha. If let's say you put a pot or put a bowl, and you put the bowl, you stood the bowl, you wanted the water to fill up the bowl. So if you went ahead and you put a bowl and you put the bowl in a certain way that the water should collect in the bowl. So we say, what do you want? We say that water that you put in that collected in the bowl would be considered water that you were interested in, because you placed the bowl in the way that the bowl should catch the water. Why did you put the bowl in that way that the bowl should catch the water? You wanted that you were interested in that water. So if you were interested that the water should go into the bowl, so that water would be considered 12a1. That water would be considered water that if it subsequently falls on fruit, that was water that you were interested in. But the water that just, let's say the water that overflows, right? You put this bowl to catch the water, but there was water that did not fit into the bowl. That water you're not interested in because it doesn't fit into the bowl. So that water that splashes out will not be water that if it subsequently falls on fruit, that will not prepare the fruit, because you were not interested in that water. You were only interested in the bowl could contain 12 ounces. The first 12 ounces that fell into the bowl, that was the water that was the water that you're interested in. That's in the bowl. So mayim hanitazim, the water that falls out of this bowl. So v'hanitzafim, and the water, that water that splashes or spills out of the bowl, that will not be water that will prepare the food for contamination. However, shebetocha, the water that's in the bowl, Harizeh b'chiyutan. It's considered that that's water that you wanted. So therefore, so and it says over there, this Mishnah over there is talking about you had a mind to protect so let's see what he says. He says, even though you put the bowl in order to also protect from the wall from underneath. So when you cut fruit, if you cut fruit from the tree and you watch that the fruit never came in contact with water. From the time you cut the tree, you put it in a bag, you put it in a sack. And right. Rainwater, when the fruit is on the tree, or tree, do I want the rain on the fruit or not? That would depend. If I don't want the rain on the fruit, it will not prepare the fruit. Right, exactly. So now, right, if it's dry, if liquid never comes in contact with that fruit, any of these 7 liquids if they don't come in contact with the fruit, and it will not become contaminated if a dead mouse comes in contact with this fruit. And even if a dead mouse comes in contact with the fruit, but if water came that you had no interest in, you will not make it prepared for contamination. Now, so here we have a double, two things happening at the same time, multitasking. What's a multitask? That I'm putting this bowl on the wall. I want to catch the water, that the water should not go into I also want to protect the wall, but I have a double purpose. I wanted to protect the wall, but I also showed, so I want to protect the wall, but I also showed that I'm happy to catch the water. And I want both. I want to catch the water, and I want to go ahead and I want to protect the wall. So that's that. So the fact, even though my intention is also to protect the wall, but that's considered enough of an act. So because so too the Gemara. So the Gemara wants to compare the same thing by the Zav. Even though the point of the Zav when he wears the pouch is to protect his clothing, but you wanted it to catch it the same way that the guy wants the bowl to catch the water. That's considered a significant act, and it would be considered it would prepare the water. If that water subsequently goes on food, it would prepare the food for contamination. So too, when the guy who has his discharge, when he goes ahead and he carries it in order it's protecting he only wants to protect his clothing, but he's also is interested in catching that discharge. That therefore he needs this pouch, so therefore he should be in violation if he wears it on Shabbat. So why is there an opinion that says if the guy goes out with this pouch on Shabbat, which the Gemara's understanding doesn't have the status of clothing, but it's not there to protect his body, it's protect his clothing. So putting something on to protect the clothing, and the item that you're putting on is not really a piece of clothing, and it's not wearing it, then it's not called wearing it. It's not the normal type of clothes. It's not a real garment. So therefore, it would be considered carrying. So why, if it's considered carrying, so why is there an opinion that says that if the guy is Zav, he goes out on Shabbat with this pouch, he's not in Torah violation? So the Gemara introduces a very important concept. Morning. If you want a Gemara, there's right here the Gemaras. If you want to do by heart or whatever you want, you have all options. We give options here, not stock trading, but options. Now, so the Gemara says, what is it? We have a machlok, a famous argument on Shabbat. What's the famous argument on Shabbat? Regarding a malacha on Shabbat, when you do an act, we're gonna explain it according to Tosfos' understanding. A malacha, an act on Shabbat. When you do an act on Shabbat, an act of work on Shabbat, do you have to do the act? Do you have to do the act of work on Shabbat? Let's say there's something called carrying on Shabbat, going from a private place to a public place, right? That's one of the 39 malachot of Shabbat. Now, in the Mishkan, when they built the Mishkan, this week is Pasha Truma, we focus on the Mishkan, they carried the boards from the wagon, which is what was a private area. It had the dimensions, had a certain height, certain width. The private area, your car is like a private type of place. Your truck. He went from the private to the public, and they brought it into the place, and out to the Rishut Rabim, out to where the people were, where they were putting together the Mishkan. So they brought the stuff from the wagons to public. You had an interest to bringing it. The purpose of Malacha was I got to bring it from private to public. That's why I got to get it off the wagon from private to public. But what about if I go ahead and I bring it but I had an interest to bring it in the public property. But what about if I bring it from private to public, not because I'm interested in bringing it public property, but I just don't want it here. There's something about I want that. I don't want the dead body. I don't want the corpse in the house. Not because I want it over there. Not because I want it over there. But technically, if I bring it, if I could find it, if I have another place, an adjacent place, not public property, I'm happy to put it there too. But I moved it from private to public, not for the purpose because I needed it in the public. I just didn't want it over here. Meaning to say, I did the act, I did the actual malacha. I did the case, but not for the purpose that it was in the Mishkan. The purpose they did it when they built the Mishkan. The Torah connects the Shabbat, the mitzvah of Shabbat to the Mishkan, and we learn out that whatever was considered a work in the Mishkan, that's the work of Shabbat. That is considered that thing that you can't do on Shabbat. Because the Torah, by connecting the two, it says you can't build the Mishkan on Shabbat. You can't build the Beit HaMikdash on Shabbat. But what's called work for Shabbat, the Torah says you can't do on Shabbat, what was called work in the Mishkan. And not only that, but the question is, do I have to do it the way they did it in the Mishkan, for the purpose that they did in the Mishkan? Or if I just did the act of work without their purpose, would I be obligated or not? So that the Gemara, that's an argument of two big rabbis. That's called the malacha, an act of work. It's not needed for the actual work itself. It's not because I need that actual act of malacha, but I did the malacha. I did it. I wonder if the case is, let's say it's plowing, right? Plowing, you plow because you want to work the field. But let's say I plow not because I want to work the field, I plow because I need the dirt. I want the dirt. I did the act of plowing. But my purpose of the plowing, I softened the ground. But I wasn't softening the ground because I wanted to soften the ground because I wanted to plant there. I softened the ground for what purpose? Because I wanted the dirt. I needed dirt. I needed some dirt. I had I was making a barbecue. I needed dirt to be able to have ready dirt. Well, so it's definitely an Aveirah. I did the act. I did the act of plowing. But I didn't do it for the purpose of plowing, for the purpose of planting. I did it for some other purpose. So that would be examples of you did the act, you did the malacha. Another example, let's say, taking out a fire on Shabbat. Let's say you have coal. Let's say you have a fire, and you in the Mishkan, when they would light a piece of wood and they would take it out, they would extinguish it. One of the malachot on Shabbat now let it extinguish a fire on Shabbat. They extinguished the fire for the purpose of making a coal. You lit it, and then you extinguished it. Now it's going to be a coal. But let's say you extinguish it because you want to save money on electricity. You wanted to save air. You wanted to go ahead and you extinguish it for some other purpose, not to make a coal. But you did the act. You did the malacha of extinguishing. That's 1/3 of malachot. But you did it for some other purpose. It wasn't that you needed it wasn't the malacha for the gufa for the way it was done in the Mishkan. So all these examples, I did the act, but for another purpose. It just shows you the intent, the power of intent. That therefore that's the argument in those two rabbis. So the Gemara says over here also the Gemara says Ella. The Gemara says Ella Mabai v'Rabbi look Harab Yehuda Harab Shimon. So Rashi says. Now Rashi says. Rabbi Yehuda says a malacha that's not needed for itself, that's not called a malacha. So too over here. So now how do they explain it over here? So they say over here. So let's look at the now. So look at the Rashi. You have the Rashi, Harab Yehuda on the right side. Rashi says the Amma Rabbi Yehuda malacha she'nishlich gufa. If you don't want it to happen, Rashi also says that if I don't need, meaning I don't need, what's the here? Carrying. Carrying is, I want to carry this item from here to there. Here, I don't want the discharge. I don't want this discharge. And the whole thing, the whole purpose of me carrying this, he put on the pouch. He's carrying the pouch not because he wants it. He's not interested. He doesn't want to have this. It's not like the guy, I want to carry the boards from point A to point B. I want to carry this from point, I'm interested in this, it's something I want. Here, I don't want this. This is not something that I want, that I have interest in. I am carrying it, but it's not something that I don't want the discharge. I'm not interested in the discharge. I'm not interested in it. But so therefore, that's not the. I have no need in the pouch, but I'm just. It's not something that I want, that I have interest in, but I'm stuck. The guy is stuck. He needs to wear the pouch. When I want to go ahead and carry, when they carried the boards in the Mishkan, they wanted it, they needed it, they were interested in this, and they had purpose for it. It was something that and therefore that's how Rashi explains why this case of the Zav, when he wears his pouch, it's not something that he really desires, that he really wants, that he really has a great purpose for him, but he's stuck type of thing. So therefore that Rashi says would not be considered the malacha the way it was done in the Mishkan. It was done in the Mishkan for a much more beneficial type of purpose. And therefore it would not be considered a malacha that's needed for itself. So that's what the Gemara says over here. Now, so they explain like this. The guy who wears this pouch, that therefore it would not be considered for itself, and therefore one opinion says he would be exempt on a Torah level, but of course rabbinically, since he's wearing the pouch only to protect his clothing, it would be rabbinically prohibited. And the other opinion says that it would not be that it would be even biblically prohibited. Okay. Now comes the that was very heavy Gemara that we had until now, as you know. Now we're going to get a little lighter. Yes. I mean, if he would have been wearing, right, if he would have been wearing something to protect himself in a way that it's either protecting his body, that it shouldn't go on his body, not to protect his clothing, or if he would be wearing something that's normal way of wearing, if it's a normal type of garment that people wear. But whatever, right, if he would be wearing it, that could have been another way. He could have prevented it. But he didn't. He wasn't wearing it in a normal way of wearing clothing. Okay. Tani de Rabbi Shmuel. Yotze Adam b'tfilin be'erev Shabbat u'chashecha. He says a person could go out with tefillin within a half hour before Shabbat. Within a half hour before Shabbat, we said earlier that the guy with the needle in his, if you're a tailor, you shouldn't go out with the needle within a half hour before Shabbat. Why? Because you might forget. You might come to carry the needle on Shabbat. But if you're and people need to be also careful when you have stuff in your pockets before Shabbat. You have to be aware before Shabbat, when you're getting close to Shabbat, about leaving things in your pockets because you might come to forget. You have to be aware of that as well. Don't keep things in your pocket so close to Shabbat if you're going out to areas where there's no Eruv. And even if there's Eruv, if there's things of Mukseh, you got to also be aware of that. But you could go out with tefillin Friday afternoon. Within a half hour before sunset, you could be going out with tefillin, wearing your tefillin. Why? Remember, many of them used to wear the tefillin the whole day. Now, Shabbat, you don't wear your tefillin on Shabbat. Because Shabbat in itself is the sign. Tefillin is the sign between you and Hashem. And Shabbat is the sign. So you're not supposed to be wearing tefillin on Shabbat. But we're not afraid that you're going to come to wear the tefillin on Shabbat. And why not? Because my timer. Why aren't you afraid? Kivan the Amar Rabbi Baruch Huna, we said Chayiv Adam lemashmesh b'tefillin kol shav v'shav. A person needs to touch his tefillin on a regular basis. You're supposed to do things to remember that you're wearing tefillin. You know, we touch. So when you're praying today, we have specific places in the davening that we touch our tefillin. Why do we touch the tefillin today in all those places? To remember we have the tefillin and we're going to act appropriately with tefillin. We're not going to crack a joke with the tefillin on. You can't crack jokes with your tefillin because that's kalot rosh. You're acting lightheaded with your tefillin. Tefillin has so many names of Hashem are in your tefillin. They're psukim from the Shema, the Hayim Shemoah, and you can't crack a joke. You can't emit gazes when you have your tefillin. There's a certain level of holiness that you have to have when you have your tefillin. So therefore, in the old days, most probably, where they were not praying specifically, like we only pray with our tefillin, we don't keep our tefillin the whole day. So throughout the day, they had to touch their tefillin regularly to remember they have the tefillin on. They would work with their tefillin. But you have to still remember, you can't lose focus. You got your tefillin on, and don't forget, you got your tefillin. You got to act a certain way. The Chayiv Adam, and I was thinking perhaps, you try to, as a rabbi, you try to make a case to encourage people not to use their cell phone during davening, right? That's one of my jobs, right? To encourage, right? So maybe this Gemara I wanted to use the Gemara says you have to touch your tefillin, not to forget, not to act inappropriate with your tefillin. So if a person's reading his phone, could be there are things that go on. Guy sends a joke on the phone, a certain thing that people can see on the phone, which might be lightheaded, might be a problem of kalot rosh on the phone. This is another, trying to make a case, social media, that might be lightheadedness with the tefillin. A guy's going through social media, Mark is saying, if a guy's going through social media and seeing things that are lightheaded, it's not the seriousness that you have to have when you have a holiness on, you're wearing it, that might be make a case, add to the case of why a person should not be looking at his phone, during when you have your tefillin on. So the Gemara said, Kal v'chol mitzitz. We know this from the tzitz. The Kohen Gadol, we're going to learn about, he had a headband. The tzitz. You remember Jack McEnroe, right? The tennis player, right? He had the Havdil. They had the Kohen Gadol had a headband that said Kodesh LaHashem. That's what it said on the headband. Holy to Hashem. It's gold. It's made out of gold. And matzitz, it's one of the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol. The only the Kohen Gadol who wore the tzitz. The matzitz she'ein bo elaskar achat. Hashem's name is only written once. Kodesh LaHashem. God's name is written once on that headband. Torah, the Torah says, the Torah tells us he has to be constantly, he has to constantly remember that he's wearing it, not to lose focus. To be man, we shouldn't lose focus. And I got that on me. God's name is on me, and I can't lose focus. So tefillin, the holy tefillin, sheyesh bo askorot habei. You know how many times Hashem's name is mentioned in tefillin? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, v'hafta es Hashem Elokeinu, right? Then you have Ahava et Hashem Elokechem, right? You have Hashem's name many times in your tefillin, and remember. I don't remember the number, but maybe I'm guessing it's like 20 or something, 20 something. Remember, whatever you have on the shel yad, you have on the shel rosh. The Shema Vayim Shmo is on the shel yad. Shema Vayim Shmo is on the shel rosh. So you have so many names of Hashem in the tefillin. Alachas kama kama. Therefore, how much more so you can't lose focus. Hilkach mitka takalu. Therefore, you will remember that you have your tefillin on. So therefore, you don't have to be afraid, but you will take off your tefillin on time before Shabbat because you're constantly handling touching the tefillin. But when it comes to other things, when it comes to the needle or some other things that you keep in your pocket or other things you might not remember, therefore beware. Have a great day. See everybody tomorrow. Aaron, you came back to a Gemara that you ended up. Samuel, how do you doing?
You can't have
Now, he only looks at Torah sources.
But if you're in a public place, they remember to take it off.
You'll remember before Shabbat. Oh, that's a good point. So meaning he'll wherever so he has to make sure to go into some place that it's appropriate to put away the tefillin. But he'll remember before Shabbat. That's right.
Rabbi, are you going to put on the record? Related. So you say